Blow, blow, blow till I hear the breath of the Spirit blowing in me.
Hello, welcome to the Spirit of Life program. My name is Lucia Pace, and today my guest is Rosaleen Seroni. Rosaleen has a wonderful testimony of that's transformed her life, and she's going to be sharing that with us today. Welcome to our program, Rosaleen.
Thank you, Lucia.
I'll sometimes call you Rose. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Yes.
That's fine.
Rose, so what happened? Tell us about your story.
Well, the transformation of my life probably started in October 1989. I was at Mass, and in the bulletin of the Mass that Sunday was the prayer of an angry mother. And I read that through, and I can't remember what it said, but it talked about the frustrations of a mother and a woman and a wife trying to do it all, and the anger that can sometimes manifest itself out of all that. And I read that, and it really resonated with me. I really felt that it really spoke directly to me. And that night I came home, and that night I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, and I said, well, Jesus, maybe if I thought about you more, I would become a better person. And that's all I said, without any expectation of anything else. It's just something that came out. The following Tuesday or Wednesday, I was at work, and I was at my desk, and I was bending over some files, and the word Jesus just came abruptly into my mind. And I was quite surprised because of the abruptness. I wasn't thinking of God. I was at work, and I was surprised at that. And I thought to myself, oh, I am thinking about you. And so from that time, the word Jesus came in again. And from that time on, over those next few days, I started thinking about God a lot more. And I was quite surprised at the way this had happened, because it was not something that I had expected. I wasn't really a praying person, although I said prayers to a God who was up there. So that was in October 1989. Now, after that, I would go to Mass every Sunday, and we went away on a ladies' weekend. Our local Mothers Auxiliary had a weekend away, and we went away for the weekend, and there was to be no Mass that Sunday. And I can remember thinking, oh, well, I can perhaps go next Sunday. And I was even surprised at that, because I had never before looked forward to going to Mass or worried if I'd missed it. So that was okay, that was interesting. And so I went to Mass the next week, and gradually over those few weeks, my desire to go to Mass really increased. I really just started to look forward to each Sunday Mass. And the prayers seemed to be very meaningful to me. I loved to listen to the scriptures, and they really there's just sort of this interest started to be born in me, be manifested in me, this interest in scripture. And to the point where I found myself getting the missal that we had, a memorial missal that we'd had at home, that had all the prayers of the Mass in it, and I started to read that throughout the week at night time. And I was very surprised at myself doing this, but I found it quite enjoyable. So that continued on, and the desire to go to Mass increased. So I would find myself, if there was an occasion to go to a Mass during the week, I would go. I would find an excuse to go. Or on a Saturday morning, I would go, because I was working full-time. So that continued on. So that sort of brought me through to the Christmas New Year period. And I can remember I went to Mass on New Year's morning, even though we'd had a very late or very early morning on New Year's Eve, where I had we'd had a party. And I managed to get myself to get up to go to the 9 o'clock Mass. And the priest at the Mass said at the end of the Mass that he prayed that we would find our God. And that really struck me. And I thought, I really do want to find God and open myself up to him. So I said another prayer to God, that I do want to follow you. I want to open myself up to God. What happened after that is sort of interesting, because I felt these words come into my mind, questions about God. Do you believe in God? And I said, yes. Do you believe in life after death? And I was saying yes because this is what I had been taught. This is the faith of my family, my background, my upbringing. So I said yes to these questions, and as each question came into my mind, it was like it demanded an answer that I had to give. Like faith questions, I suppose you would call them. And I would find I had this sense that God wanted me to follow him. And so the desire had already been planted in me. The desire to go to Mass had already started to be there. And I said to the Lord, said to God, yes, I do want to follow you, but there would be a lot more people who have a lot more talent than I have. And I was thinking of the people in the Ladies Auxiliary who had a lot of talent. I couldn't do anything in particular, I wasn't gifted in any particular manner. So I rattled off names of people I thought God would find more use from rather than someone like me. Because I was sort of a very fearful and a very timid, shy sort of a person. And so those thoughts were going through my mind, and I had a sense of, I was very fearful for some reason. I don't know why I had this fear about following God. I don't know why, but I had this image that sort of came into my mind of me rowing a boat. And I was rowing a boat and it was all dark, but behind me I could see that there was a reflection of light behind me. And I knew that I had to let go of the oars if I wanted to see. And behind me was the Lord, and I had to let go of control of my own life and turn around, and God would be there with me.
And did you let go?
I did. And that was an image that has stayed with me since. That was part of my journey following the Lord that started at that time.
Right. And Rose, on that note, you let go of the oars, and I'm looking forward to, we have to go to a break now, but I'm looking forward to picking up on that point and finding out where he's taken you and what he's done with your life in letting go of the oars.
Okay.
We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. You're watching the Spirit of Life program, and my guest today is Rosaleen Seroni, who is sharing with us her inspirational transformation story. Hi, Rosaleen.
Hello, Lucia.
Prior to the break, Rosaleen, you mentioned that you had an image where you were sitting on a boat and you had light behind you, and you sensed that it was God, and you had your hands on the oars and you sensed that it was God asking you to let go, to look around, and in order to look around you had to let go of the oars, which is a sense of surrendering. Ouch, scary place. What happened then?
Well, it was a scary place because I like to be in charge, and I think we all like to be in control of our own lives. And I knew that my letting go was the only way that I would be able to follow God. And this is what I felt that he was asking me, inviting me into. I also had a sense that I didn't have to say yes. I had a sense that if I said no, I didn't want to follow on this path, that it would be okay, that God would still love me. I really had a sense of God's love for me, but it was a very inviting, it was an invitation that was quite irresistible. So although there was a lot of fear in that letting go, the desire for God was stronger than that fear. So I started to pray. I was praying a little bit more, and in that month of January I had 2 experiences of what I now call God's presence, but at the time I didn't know what it was. And I was in my car, and I had been sort of praying quite a bit, and I was driving along, and all of a sudden it just felt like the air was very thick. It's very hard for me to describe it even now. And I had a sense of God's presence. I had a sense of the awesomeness of God, the might of God. I had a sense of the beauty of God and the power of God. And I had a sense that we existed only because God wills that we exist. and that if He ceased to will that we exist, we would cease to exist as if we had never been. And it was a very, I can't describe really, I use words that we use, but I can't describe that power and that might and that awesomeness. And it was a very moving, not troubling, but amazing experience. It was amazing. And it sort of opened up my mind to something about God that I hadn't thought about before. I had never thought that God could be present to us. I thought God was up there, that we said our prayers to a God who lived up in heaven. So this was something very amazing. I think it was probably a couple of days later I had a very similar experience, this same feeling as if the air was thick. It was just it's like a cushioning and a cocooning, and I had a sense of God's love for me, the love of God, and that He had for me, Rosaleen, personally, that I wasn't just another person, but there was this intimacy, it was a sense of intimacy of this love. It was just beautiful. And I can remember those two moments as being transformed. They transformed my life. I divide my life now before January 1990 and after, and it was those two instances that really did it. It's like a knowledge of God, but it's not really a knowledge, it's an awareness. I didn't really know what was going on. Following those two instances, I started to find myself feeling peaceful. I had a sense of peace. I felt as if I was being immersed in peace. I felt like I was being immersed in love. I had a sharpening of my senses that saw everything in detail. The creation of God all of a sudden became alive for me. Trees, flowers, even blades of grass became sharp, branches of trees and leaves and the sounds of birds and the different flowers in the garden. It was just amazing. I had a sense of love for people, the people that I went to school with, the school community, the parish community. I just saw each person in a new way. I also experienced like something placed on my heart, and my heart was beating, and it actually went on for 24 hours a day, and I felt like something drawing my heart. It was a physical thing. It was not uncomfortable. It was actually very beautiful, but it went on 24 hours a day. Now, I didn't really know what was going on. This experience of peace and of love, of God's love and my love for other people, that went on for about a month. And I had never heard of anyone experiencing God. It had never occurred to me that it could happen. And so I didn't really know exactly what was going on, only that something had happened. And so I was sort of confused. There was sort of this state of confusion, and I was trying to examine myself as to had I imagined it. But see, I was still getting these prayers into my heart. These words would come into my mind that I would say now come from God. They were very clear. Everything was very clear. When I went to Mass on Sundays and any other time, the scriptures that I'd hear spoke into me. I didn't need an explanation. If I heard the gospel, I didn't need an explanation. It spoke exactly to me. The mustard seed, how it grows, we don't know. And I had a sense that something was growing within me. I didn't know how, and I wasn't doing it. And it was this sense of my not doing it. It wasn't my idea. I was, quite clear. This wasn't my idea of what was happening. All these things that were happening was not my idea. So this went on for about a month, and the state of confusion, and as well as the peace and the love. And during that time, I also had a sense of my own weaknesses. So I was surrounded by this feeling of God's love and His presence, and after a little while, this sense of my own weakness and sinfulness started to rise up within me. Okay. And that was a very interesting experience as well, because I thought I was a good person. Married, went to work, looked after the kids, cleaned the house, went to church on Sundays. I did everything. I was a good person. And I was very surprised to see or recognise all these things within myself that I hadn't known were there.
So there was aspects of you that you were not conscious of that was at play, that was you found that wasn't in accordance with God's ways.
Yes.
We need to go to another break, and I'd be very interested again to take up that point after the break, and perhaps we can tease that out a little bit.
Okay.
You're watching the Spirit of Life program. We'll see you back after the break. Welcome back. You're watching the Spirit of Life program. Today my guest is Rosaleen Seroni, who is sharing with us an inspirational, transforming story of her life. Welcome back, Rosaleen.
Thank you, Lucia.
Prior to the break, you mentioned that after this romancing with the spirit, to call it for a better word, you experienced also a revelation, if you like, of some of your weaknesses that you weren't conscious of before. You believed you were a good person, and yeah. So as we all do, but please, can you just pick it up from there for us and give us a little bit more detail on how these weaknesses were shown to you? And
the weaknesses that I can remember when I experienced this revelation of my weaknesses, I was actually doing the ironing and the laundry, and I just had a sense of these weaknesses that were in my heart that I wasn't aware of: jealousy, envy, pride, greed, really anger, all those sorts of things were there, which I had not been aware of. And I started to cry. I felt the shame of what was sitting in there compared to the beauty of the experience that I was having with God. I think that's where the shame came in. God was so beautiful, and I love the word that you used, romancing. God had been wooing me, and I thought everything was beautiful, and so there was a great sense of shame that the ugliness of all those things against the beauty of God. And, at work we used to, a lot of gossip, we had a lot of women, and that's the nature, the culture at the office that I was at was of gossip, and I was as much a part of it as anybody else. So if whoever was not there, they would be the one gossiping. And I can remember coming back, and at this stage I'd started to slow down. I was walking very peacefully and quietly, and I remember walking into the back of the office after coming back from lunch, and there was a sort of a gossip session going on. Normally I would have been hopped in to find out, what we're talking about, and I just couldn't. I just really couldn't. I would have been going against my own will, really, to join in. It was something I would have had to struggle to do. So I found that was an interesting thing, that the desire for those sorts of things had gone because I could see how ugly they were, and I had this beautiful experience of God's presence. So that was, but during that period of the shame and the revelation of my own sinfulness, the beauty of God was there and the love of God was there. God was present in all of that. There was no sense of condemnation or judgmentalism. It was just a revelation of what was. That's who I was. God was beautiful, and there was a beauty in me, but this needed to be revealed too, so that I could bring it to Him. I mean, it's just what they call it repentance. I didn't know what it was called then.
So I'm just interested, has your perception and love changed to another level, love of others, or?
Yes, because I
knew.
knew.
Can you just share that with us?
Because I know what was lurking around in my own heart, and still does. It still does. I know that I'm no different than anyone else. And so what I experienced, other people experience, and other people, we all want the same thing. We're all made out of the same stuff. God made us all. I'm not special or different. I'm the same as other people. So the revelation of my own sinfulness gives me more of a heart of compassion for and understanding for other people, even though I might not always show it, because I still get impatient and all those sorts of things. But I have someone to bring them to. And there's a recognition of those things, and I think it's a recognition of them. And God brings healing into those areas. So it did give me a greater love for people and a greater compassion for people.
So not only did you experience God firsthand and His Spirit moving from within you, now you've been invited to share His characteristics and His nature and express it to others. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Now, look, just for the sake of people that have problems with the word God even, can you just try and explain to us, how do you know it was God? Like, obviously you've had a transformation, a shift, and you know yourself, you know the change. But how do you know it was God that was doing all these inner thoughts inside you and all?
Well, at the time I didn't.
Yes.
I had never heard of this. This is something new to me. I had a Catholic upbringing, and I had a faith-filled. Our house was, very sort of religious or devout, I suppose. Everything was given to me, but so I didn't really know it was God, because no one had ever told me that you could experience God. And that's what this examination was. What is it? Is it my imagination? As time went on, I had started to read the scriptures, and everything that I had experienced, I was able to find in the scriptures, or I could find in the story of a saint, or in the teachings of the church. So there was not one experience that I had that I wasn't able to confirm or have confirmed from the church, really, through the scriptures. And so I remember thinking to myself, the church is the structure set in place for me to find my way to God. And so that sense that I had of that shame, I brought that to, we have the sacrament of reconciliation in the Catholic Church. And that was, I felt drawn to that. I hadn't been to reconciliation for years. I've been to Mass, but I hadn't been to... But this love of God was drawing me to bring some closure to my own sins. And so I was drawn to come to the sacrament of reconciliation, which I did eventually. But I had a great deal of fear doing that.
Rosaleen, I am fascinated with your story. It's simple, it's real, and it's a definite shift in you. Obviously, you felt it and you're expressing it. I wonder if you could come back again next week, please, to talk a little bit more about reconciliation and what happened there, and also your calling, your identity, your purpose. Obviously, this has got a purpose to it, of where you've been led. So would you be happy to come back next week?
Yes, I'd love to.
Thank you. You've been watching the Spirit of Life program. I've been interviewing Rosaleen Seroni, and she will be back with us next week. Stay tuned. We'll see you again, same time, same place.
Bring it to birth and blow where you will. Blow, blow, blow till I be but breath of the Spirit.